The war before man, before there were voices, before there were footsteps upon the soil, before the first breath of man, the heavens themselves trembled. In the beginning, there was no sound, no motion, only a vast and endless void. Time had no meaning, for nothing existed to measure its passing. Then from the silence, a single spark ignited. It was not born, for nothing before it existed to give it life. It simply was. That spark became the first light. It spread like a fire through the endless dark, carving open the void and shaping the heavens. From that light came the first stars, burning with purity and purpose, and from those stars came the first guardians of creation, the Watchers. They were not flesh nor bone, but radiant essence molded into form, protectors born of the very light that birthed the heavens. For a moment, the cosmos knew peace, but light does not rise without casting a shadow. Far below the newborn heavens, in the deepest hollow of the void, something stirred. The light, in its brilliance, revealed what had always been hidden, the abyss. And from that abyss, the first shadows awoke. They were not like the Watchers. Where the Watchers were shaped by purpose, the dwellers of the abyss were shaped by hunger. They were absence given form, craving the light that exposed them. And so, creation knew balance, the light above, the darkness below. For a time, neither touched the other. But then, the source stirred. It began as a pulse, faint and steady, at the center of all that was made. From that pulse came the seed of life. It was not a creature, not a being of thought or will, but the essence of existence itself, the wellspring from which all living things would flow. Within it lay the promise of worlds yet unformed, of creatures yet unseen, of souls yet unborn. The Watchers gathered around it, their light reflecting upon its surface. They felt its power, the weight of what it held, and they swore in silence to protect it. For within the seed lay the destiny of creation. But the dwellers felt it too. To them, it was not a promise, but a feast. If they could consume the seed, they would swallow all creation before it even began. The balance broke. The first tremor shook the heavens as the abyss split open. A tide of darkness surged upward, clawing its way into the newborn skies. The Watchers rose to meet it, their forms burning like suns as they formed a barrier of light around the seed. The collision was the first sound ever heard, a thunder that split the void and sent waves of energy rippling through existence. Where they clashed, reality itself bent and cracked. Stars flared and died. The first winds howled. The first oceans boiled into being as light and shadow tore through the fabric of nothingness. Mountains rose from the shock of their strikes and crumbled under the weight of their fury. This was not a war of territory. There was no land, no sky, no soil to claim. This was a war for the soul of existence itself. The Watchers struck with radiance so bright it could burn through the void. The dwellers moved like living storms, their forms twisting and reforming with every strike. Every clash of their power carved reality a little more. Days and nights were born in those moments, light pushing back darkness, darkness swallowing light, the cycle beginning with every blow. The seed pulsed faster, as if aware of the battle fought for its fate. With every heartbeat of creation, its power spread, unseen and unstoppable. The Watchers held the line, but the abyss was endless. The dwellers surged again and again, a tide that refused to break. The first to fall were the stars. One by one, they shattered under the weight of the war. Their fragments burned across the void, leaving streaks of fire that would one day become the first comets. The heavens wept light, and the abyss answered with shadow. The watchers knew the seed could not remain exposed. With every clash, the abyss grew closer to its heart. In the midst of the chaos, they carried it away, seeking a place untouched by light or shadow, a sanctuary hidden from both. Through the storm of creation, they carved a refuge, a garden sealed from the war. And there, they hid the seed. It lay in silence, waiting, untouched, as the heavens burned and the abyss roared. The war did not end that day. It could not. Light and darkness had met, and neither could destroy the other. They clashed until the void itself learned to breathe, until creation itself bent under the weight of their fury. When at last the first war stilled, the heavens were not as they had been. They bore scars, stars shattered, realms broken, echoes of the battle carved into the fabric of reality. The abyss retreated, not defeated, but waiting, patient as the void that birthed it. The watchers held the skies, not victorious, but vigilant, guarding the seed that would one day awaken. And so the heavens fell silent once more. From the seed of life, the first whispers of a new world stirred, a place of soil and water, of sky and breath, a place where the promise hidden within it would finally take form. One day, that place would be called Eden. One day, life would walk its paths. One day, the first man and woman would open their eyes, unaware of the blood and light spilled for their existence. This was the first war, the war before man, the war in heaven. When the first echoes of war faded, the heavens were no longer unbroken. What had once been a flawless expanse of light now bore the wounds of creation's first battle. Fragments of shattered stars drifted across the void, and where their light fell, worlds began to take shape. The war had not only scarred existence, it had forged it. Yet peace did not follow. The abyss had not retreated in defeat. Its shadows lingered at the edges of creation like a storm gathering strength. Though the watchers had sealed the seed of life within the sanctuary they carved, a place later to be known as Eden, they knew the darkness would not stop. The seed pulsed quietly beneath their protection, unaware of the struggle it had borne into the cosmos. The watchers looked upon the heavens and understood a terrible truth. The war would not end until one side consumed the other. Light and shadow could not share dominion forever. From the depths below, the abyss stirred once more. Its hunger was eternal, its patience as vast as the void itself. It had seen the seed taken, and it understood its power. What the watchers protected was not simply a source of life, it was the heart of destiny. And so, the second wave began. The shadows rose again, darker and more furious than before. Where they moved, the void trembled. They did not strike blindly this time. They surged toward Eden, toward the sanctuary hidden within creation's folds. The watchers formed their line of radiance once more, their bodies blazing brighter than ever before. The heavens lit like a storm of suns as they descended to defend the seed. The clash that followed was unlike the first. No longer was the void untouched. Now the fabric of reality itself had weight, and that weight shattered under their fury. Waves of light tore across the cosmos, carving rivers of fire that cooled into the first stone. Shadows spread like a flood, shaping caverns and hollow places where light could never reach. With every strike, creation expanded. With every clash, the future was written. The war was not only destroying, it was building. The seed pulsed faster in Eden's heart, as though the echoes of battle stirred something within it. Its energy seeped outward, subtle and unseen, flowing into the forming world beyond. Soil formed around its sanctuary. Water pooled where light and shadow clashed, and the first whispers of life's potential began to hum in the silence between battles. But the abyss would not relent. Its tide grew heavier, wave upon wave of shadow crashing against the Watcher's light. The heavens bent under the weight of their fury. Some Watchers fell, their radiant forms scattering into fragments of light that became the first constellations. Where dwellers of the abyss were torn apart, their essence seeped into the earth, giving rise to the first dark places of the world. And still, the seed endured, untouched, as the war raged for its fate. A fracture split through the highest of the heavens, a wound so deep it reached into the sanctuary itself. The Watchers sealed it with their own essence, pouring their light into the breach. That sacrifice became the first barrier, a wall of divine power surrounding Eden, separating it from the chaos beyond. The abyss roared against the wall, shadows writhing and clawing, but they could not breach it. For a time, the seed was safe, but the Watchers knew what this meant. The abyss would not give up. It would wait, it would gather, and one day, it would strike again. In the silence after the storm, the heavens looked upon what had been made. The war had torn them apart, but in their wombs, creation had begun to grow. Light and shadow, in their endless struggle, had birthed the foundation of the world to come. And deep within Eden, the seed of life pulsed with quiet certainty. It did not know of the Watchers or the dwellers, of the war fought for its existence. It only knew what it was meant to do. One day, it would awaken. One day, it would breathe. One day, from its power, life would rise. But for now, the war in heaven was far from over. The fall of the heavens. The heavens had been forged in radiance, yet now they burned beneath the weight of endless war. The first scars had cut deep, but the second wave left wounds that would never heal. Where there had once been perfect light, now there were fractures, cracks stretching like veins across the sky. The Watchers stood in defiance, their bodies carved from the same light that birthed the stars. They were unyielding, but even light has limits. For every Watcher that rose to shield the seed, 1,000 shadows surged against them. The abyss had no form, no single shape to destroy. It was hunger made real, darkness without end, and every strike only seemed to birth more of it. Eden, hidden and sealed, pulsed quietly behind its wall of divine power. The seed of life remained untouched, its rhythm steady, as if it could not hear the roar of war beyond its sanctuary. But the heavens knew the truth. This battle was no longer simply for the seed. It was for existence itself. The third wave came without warning, a storm of shadow unlike any before it. The abyss rose not as fragments or armies, but as a single, overwhelming tide. It swallowed the lower heavens, extinguishing whole realms in silence. The light fought back, and for a brief moment, it seemed the two forces would tear creation itself apart. Where their power met, stars collapsed, their dying light scattering into the void like embers. The Watchers poured every fragment of themselves into the fight, their radiance so fierce it burned through the very fabric of reality. That fire cut through the abyss, carving a line between light and shadow so bright it would one day become the horizon of the first world. But the cost was great. One by one, the Watchers began to fall. They did not die as mortals would. They became something else. When their light shattered, it did not vanish. It sank. Pieces of their essence fell into the shaping earth below, merging with the soil, the stone, the water. The first whispers of soul took root, fragments of divine light sleeping within the forming world. The dwellers of the abyss fell too, torn apart in the clash of powers. Their essence seeped into the deep places, into caverns and shadows where the light could not reach. There, their hunger remained, waiting, patient, woven into the bones of the earth itself. Creation had become a battlefield, and in its struggle, it had given birth to something new: balance. The heavens were no longer whole. The abyss was no longer unbroken. Between them stretched the forming world, a fragile space caught between light and darkness. Eden lay at its center, untouched, a sanctuary of stillness amidst the storm. The Watchers knew what they had done. Their war had shaped destiny. Their sacrifice had seeded the earth with both light and shadow. And the seed of life, pulsing quietly within Eden, would one day awaken into a world already marked by their battle. When the final clash of the third wave ended, silence returned. It was not the silence of the void before creation, but a heavy, waiting quiet, the pause between storms. The heavens bore their wounds. The abyss retreated once more, not in defeat, but in calculation. Both sides had lost. Both sides had changed. And both sides understood. The war was far from over. The Watchers gathered what remained of their strength. They reforged the barrier around Eden, pouring the last of their radiance into its walls. That light would remain for ages beyond counting, a shield no shadow could breach, until the time came for the seed to awaken. And so, the heavens held their breath. From the ashes of war, the first winds moved across the forming earth. The first drops of rain fell where light met shadow. The first spark of warmth touched the soil. The seed of life pulsed once more, its rhythm steady, carrying within it the promise of what was to come. One day, life would rise from the dust. One day, voices would break the silence. One day, the first man and woman would open their eyes, walking in a world shaped by a war they would never remember. But for now, the heavens bore their scars. The abyss waited in silence, and the story of creation was still being written in light and shadow. This was the fall of the heavens. The war had begun, and it would not end until the first breath of man. The heavens were no longer what they once were. What had begun as a flawless expanse of radiance now hung fractured and scarred. Stars flickered like dying embers, and the vast realms of light bore deep wounds carved by the endless clash of creation's first war. Below, the abyss churned and seethed, hungering for what it could not claim. Eden lay untouched at the center of it all. The sanctuary created by the Watchers had become the final refuge for the seed of life. Behind its barrier of divine essence, the seed pulsed in perfect rhythm, untouched by the chaos outside. It did not know of the war, of the light sacrificed to protect it, or of the shadow that longed to consume it. It only existed, waiting for the moment when it would awaken and shape the destiny locked within. But the abyss had not finished. From the depths came the final surge. It was not an army this time, nor a tide of formless shadow. It was the abyss itself, rising as one, a single wave of darkness large enough to eclipse the heavens. It struck without sound, swallowing entire realms in its advance. The Watchers rose again. Though their numbers were broken, though their light was dimmed, they stood unyielding. Their radiance flared brighter than ever before as they gathered above Eden, forming a wall of living light to shield the seed. The collision was beyond sound, beyond sight. Where the abyss struck the Watchers, reality itself bent and screamed. Entire stretches of the heavens were torn away in an instant. The first rift between realms opened, a wound so vast it would never fully close. From that tear, the fabric of creation unraveled and rewove itself, giving birth to the unseen spaces between worlds. Eden trembled. Its barrier held, but cracks began to form, faint and fragile. The Watchers poured the last of their power into the wall, sealing the fractures with their very essence. One by one, they faded, their light dissolving into the sanctuary itself. The abyss clawed and pressed, its hunger unending, but it could not break through. In the end, it withdrew, leaving behind only silence and shadow. For the first time since the war began, the heavens were still. But the cost had been beyond measure. Where once the skies were filled with countless Watchers, only a handful remained. Their radiance was dim, their strength nearly gone. The heavens bore scars that would never heal. And within Eden, the barrier now glowed with the faint, lingering light of those who had given themselves to protect it. The seed pulsed once more. This time, the sound of its rhythm reached beyond Eden. It echoed into the wounded heavens and down into the depths of the abyss. Light and shadow both felt it. It was not a call of war or peace. It was simply life, stirring for the first time. The Watchers looked upon the sanctuary and knew their purpose had been fulfilled. The seed would awaken one day, and when it did, creation would begin anew. But they also knew the truth. The war was not over. The abyss would rise again. Shadow would always seek to consume light, and light would always rise to meet it. For now, though, the heavens rested. From the ashes of battle, the first world solidified. The soil cooled, the oceans calmed, the air grew still. Within Eden, the seed of life waited in silence, carrying within it the promise of man and woman, of a future yet unwritten. And far beyond the sanctuary, deep within the abyss, the shadows whispered. They would not forget. The war had ended not in victory, but in silence. Light and shadow had clashed until neither could move, until creation itself trembled under the weight of their struggle. Now, the heavens were quiet. Where the radiance of the Watchers once burned, faint glimmers floated like fading embers across the sky. Where the abyss had surged, the void lay still, waiting, whispering in the deep. Eden alone remained untouched. The sanctuary stood as an island of peace in a sea of scars. Its barrier glowed softly, forged from the essence of the Watchers who had given themselves to shield it. Inside, the seed of life pulsed with a rhythm steady and patient, as though it had never noticed the war that raged beyond its walls. But now, something was changing. The seed had slept through the storms of creation, but the echoes of light and shadow had seeped into it. The sacrifices of the Watchers, the hunger of the abyss, the birth of the first stars, and the fall of the heavens, all of it had left a mark. It began to stir, its pulse growing stronger, its energy flowing outward into the forming world beyond Eden. Where that energy touched the soil, the earth shifted. Where it reached the oceans, the waters stirred. Life's first breath was not a sound, but a hum, a vibration deep within creation itself. The seed of life was awakening. Outside the sanctuary, the watchers watched in silence. Their light was dim, their strength nearly gone, but they felt the shift. The war had not been in vain. Something new was rising from the ashes of their sacrifice. Far below, in the depths of the abyss, the dwellers felt it too. The pulse of the seed called to them, not with words, but with promise. They stirred, their hunger growing once more. Though they had been pushed back, though Eden's barrier remained unbroken, they knew the truth. What was awakening inside the sanctuary was not the end of the war, but the beginning of a new one. The heavens held their breath as the seed's energy flowed outward. From its pulse came the first true winds, sweeping across the forming world. They carved valleys and shaped mountains. The first rains fell, pooling into rivers and oceans. Where water touched soil, the first spark of life shimmered unseen, waiting for the day it would rise. Inside Eden, the seed glowed brighter, its rhythm steady and powerful. It carried within it the future, the first breath of man and woman, the first step upon the soil, the first voice to break the silence of the world. It did not yet know their names, for names did not yet exist, but their essence lay within it, sleeping, waiting. The watchers gathered what remained of their strength and poured it into the barrier one final time. They sealed Eden completely, locking the sanctuary away from both light and shadow. The seed would remain untouched until the moment was right. And so, the world settled into stillness. The war had passed. The heavens bore their scars. The abyss waited in silence, and Eden held the heart of all that was to come. One day, the seed would awaken fully. One day, the first man and woman would rise from its power, stepping into a world shaped by the clash of light and shadow. They would walk upon the earth, breathe the air born from sacrifice, and live unaware of the war that had carved the path before them. For now, creation slept, but beneath the soil of Eden, the future stirred. For ages beyond measure, creation lay in silence. The heavens no longer echoed with the roar of war, but their scars remained. Stars burned dimly where once they had blazed. The void whispered in the places where light had fallen away. And beneath it all, the world slept, a fragile sphere cradled between light and shadow. At the center of that world lay Eden. The sanctuary remained untouched, sealed by the last light of the watchers who had given themselves to protect it. Its barrier glowed faintly, a quiet promise in the midst of creation's stillness. And within it, the seed of life pulsed, its rhythm steady and patient, waiting for the time appointed to awaken. That time had come. It began as a single heartbeat. The seed pulsed once, and the sound echoed through all creation. Mountains trembled, oceans stirred. The heavens themselves shivered as though remembering the war that had carved them into being. The pulse came again, stronger this time, and the world responded. The soil warmed, the rivers brightened, the winds shifted, carrying with them the first whisper of something new. Light gathered within Eden as the seed cracked open. From its core poured energy unlike anything the heavens or the abyss had ever felt. It was not the blazing radiance of the watchers, nor the consuming hunger of the dwellers. It was balance. It was life. Where that energy touched the soil of Eden, the first green sprouted. Grass unfurled in the stillness, soft and vibrant. Trees rose from the earth, their roots reaching deep into the sanctuary's heart. The first flowers opened their petals, drinking in the light of a sun that had waited ages to shine upon them. And then, from the very center of the seed, form began to take shape. It was not of light alone, nor of shadow, but of both. It was the essence of the war, the balance born from sacrifice and struggle. From the soil of Eden, molded by the seed's power, the first body rose. Its chest lifted with a sound that had never been heard before, the first breath. The second followed, drawn from the same essence, shaped by the same energy. Two forms, side by side, standing beneath the trees of a world untouched by war. They opened their eyes, and for the first time, creation looked back at itself through the gaze of man and woman, Adam and Eve. They did not know the heavens had burned for them. They did not know the watchers had given their light, nor that the abyss still waited in the deep places of the earth. They only knew the garden around them, the warmth of the sun, the sound of wind moving through leaves, and the steady rhythm of their own breath. Above them, the heavens watched in silence. The last of the watchers, their light dim and distant, felt the weight of the moment. Their war had ended not in victory or defeat, but in this, life, flesh and soul, born of both light and shadow, destined to walk a world shaped by sacrifice. Far below, the abyss stirred. It had not been destroyed, only waiting. It felt the spark of humanity and knew the war was not over. The seed had awakened, and with it, a new chapter of creation had begun. In Eden, Adam and Eve took their first steps. Their voices broke the eternal silence, laughter and wonder carrying into the still air. They did not know they were walking upon the graves of stars, breathing the gift of fallen light. They did not know their very souls carried the echo of the first war. But the heavens knew, and the abyss knew. And so began the story of man, born not from peace, but from conflict, not from perfection, but from sacrifice. The war in heaven had ended, but the war for earth had just begun.